Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sotadeology. In today's video, we're going to look at the full scope of Sotadeology. Sotadeology is a proposed novel field that, if adopted, will help us to know the flipping mechanism at a quantum level. And the flipping that we have is a sort of artistic and scientific flipping. So in the universe, in the mechanism of universe, there is flipping. We have flipping. So that flipping is so profound that we need to know the mechanics of that flipping in order to advance in science and technology. Well, there is a recent research publication in which we have what is known as a semi-Dirac fermion. So the scientists were able to discover a particular quasi-particle that, if moved in one direction, will be massive, and if moved in other direction, will be massless. So when you look at that kind of situation, you see that there is a kind of transition, and that is what I have discovered in unification of quantum mechanics to classical mechanics. At that phase of transition, there is a kind of flipping that we usually have. So this flipping, we have it in dimensions. We have the flipping, and that is why dimensions are independent of the advanced dimension. So for instance, if we have 2D dimension, that 2D dimension will be dependent on 3D dimension. And so we have this interlock of dimensions. And as a result of that, for you to have full picture of any dimension that you are domiciled in, that particular dimension must be flipped. And I gave example of, if you have an ant on 2D plain paper, the ant will not be able to explore the other side of the paper unless the paper is being flipped by somebody in 3D. You understand? So now, if you look at that kind of situation, if the paper plane is being flipped, you know that paper has been transcended into 3D. And so the ant might even see the person that did the flipping as a god. You understand? And that is why I usually say that we have signature of Almighty God in the universe. Because for us to move from the expansion phase of the universe to the contracting phase of the black hole, there must be that flipping mechanism. And so that flipping mechanism, the study of that is what is called Sotadeology. And so we're going to use time energy wave model to actually illustrate this. And if this field is adopted, it's going to be so beneficial to our education system. And so we're going to look at the full scope. One, I said it's artistic flipping, artistic and then scientific flipping of a system for a balanced solution. That is Sotadeology. So now, how come we have artistic flipping in this, definition of Sotadeology? So Sotadeology is going to serve as connecting string of art to science. Now, for us to dissect the full scope of Sotadeology, we might need to look at a situation where we have emergence of a neonate, right from when the cell was formed to the advanced level where the whole entirety of the neonate is formed. When we look at that, we see that there is a kind of artistic, because how can you imagine just a mere cell, even to the point where it wasn't a cell, up to where it emerged as a newborn baby. How would you have imagined? How would you have imagined such development to that kind of formation? You understand what I'm trying to say is that in just as we have underlying physics of emanation, or just as we have underlying physics of manifestation of object and things in the universe, will as well have the artistic shape, form and formation. And that is why there is a tiny line between art and science. And so we're going to look at it because this field will actually go into biology as well. It will as well go into biology. So we need to, though we might attribute shape forming to physics and things like that, but basically we know that the way the shapes are being formed, the structure and the attributes of the shapes are so dynamic to the point that we need to know that it's it to the point that we need to know that it has artistic attributes as well. And that is why we have this Sotadeology in place. So now, by the experiment carried out by those scientists, I may later publish their, I may put a link to the publication you understand, maybe in my other videos. But there is a kind of experiment conducted in line with, experiment that discovered that quasi particle, which if moved in one direction would be massive and in another direction will be massless. So that is a kind of flipping in that transiting point. There is a kind of flipping because it's more or less like going from massless to massive transition. You understand? So now this, the first thing, okay, I've discussed how right from where, even when the cell wasn't formed, till where we have cell to a full formed neonate. So when we dissect the whole process and the underlying phenomena, we are going to see the trait of artistry and then the trait of physics in the whole thing. So, but we're going to use time energy wave model to illustrate the flipping that we have in the universe, as that is related to Sotadeology. So now this is the diagram. We have time trajectory inversely related to energy's trajectory. And the first phase that we have expansion of time to energy. And that expansion is highly needed for mass convergence at the present phase, which is the point of transition. And after time has traveled from the classical realm down through the suspension, arbitrary suspension of the quantum realm, to where time was able to get the positron of electron and inject that into the system for momentum into the black hole. And now we can see the triangle as it is being flipped. We have expanding triangle, and when that is flipped, we have contracting triangle. So basically, we need to really go deep into the mechanism for us to understand that flipping mechanics that we have in this. Now, when you supply this electrons mass worth into the formula of everything, you will see that this electron mass will generate mass worth at classical level, which is what we have here. So now, this formula is so powerful in the sense that it fits back on itself. So whatever you generate, this particular output can still be used as input to generate further output. And so here we have, when you put this classical mass worth into the formula, then we're going to have suspension of weak conveying force, which is this 4m, to the strong conveying force, which is um. So what we're going to have at classical level will be this value, which is 5.7 times 10 raised by 48. That is the suspension of the arbitrary mass worth that we have up here. Now, for us to move from the classical realm down to the quantum realm, we have to do that manually, because it is not, the trajectory is not symmetric. It is not symmetric in the sense that when you look at what we have here, if we were to look at this value, if you put this quantum mass, if you put this quantum wave amplitude inside this formula, we're going to get this value. Now, this value that we have is, this value is bigger than, this value that we have, yes, is bigger than this particular value, which is the electron's mass worth. And this electron mass worth is bigger than this mass worth of wave amplitude at quantum level, which is, the region where we have the suspension. So basically, if we're to look at the hierarchical order, that means as they are moving away from the zero, we have this. This is going to be the first contact point, followed by this electron's mass worth, and then followed by this. So we see that they move away from the zero in order of their size, that is from high size to small size. But if we look at what we have here, definitely the suspension, the arbitrary suspension that we have here, is going to be from small to the big size. From small to the big size. So if we are to look at what we have up here, will be from the big to the small. Now you can see that flipping, that inversion in it. So what we have here at the classical level is having, big mass worth through a narrow structure. That is what we have. So we can say that the mass worth formation expand the structure more. But here we have the big mass worth outside the narrow structure. That is what we have here. So when you look at this, that might explain the reason why why what we have here is synonymous to vacuum, like something that can absorb, because its mass worth value, its mass convergence is outside the system, while the real mass worth that we have at the classical level is within the arbitrary. So the real mass worth is outside the arbitrary suspension. So you can see that flipping. You can see the flipping, which is from small particles to huge mass formation, and the classical to be from huge mass formation to small particles. So that is the kind of flipping that we have in the system. And this study will actually help us to know, more about the formation of, intelligent minds. Will help us to know more about the uh, structure of the universe. Will help us to know virtually. Will help us to know structure of everything in the universe, and that is why this field, this Sotadeology, is most ideal in this current dispensation in science and technology for needed advancement. And like I said in the previous video, actually I stumbled on ancient Greek poet whose name was Sotadeology, and his own contribution was developing palindromic poem, which is having poem that is being read clockwise and being flipped such that it is read anti-clockwise. So that is his own development, and you can see that his development in literature has to do with flipping, while my own contribution has to do with flipping as well, which is not in literature but in science. And that flipping that we have, has to do with the transition that from expanding phase of the universe to the contracting phase of the universe, and that is what is so important in that unification of quantum mechanics to classical mechanics. So based on that, the idea is, the development of the field is titled Sotadeology, as a field that we can actually study in order to know the flipping mechanism of the universe and the flipping mechanism of everything in the universe. So that is that. If you find this video quite informative, don't hesitate to smash the like button. I'm going to put link to my novel research discovery, link to my scientific research publication in the description below, and then don't hesitate to share this with your friend, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel so as to be notified for the subsequent upload. Thank you. God bless you.